A Florida high school track coach has been arrested for allegedly attempting to have sexual contact with a 16-year-old student and not disclosing he was HIV positive. What's going on in Florida? Let's talk about it. This is Criminal Justice Corner, where we discuss true crime stories, we give the real details surrounding what occurred, and just in case you find yourself in the same situation, we give you actionable advice and tips on how you can potentially get yourself out. I'm Dr. Jennifer Matthews, the host of the Criminal Justice Corner. I have 16 years of experience in the field of criminal justice and a doctoral degree in criminal justice. I am also an expert in video evidence. Today, I have with me a special guest, retired police officer Ken Francisco. Mr. Francisco is a retired police officer from the suburbs of Chicago. He has over 20 years of experience in law enforcement. Ken, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure, and thanks again for having me on your show. But I've been in law enforcement, retired now for, I had 22 years, worked in special details and so forth, and worked in investigations as a detective. And I've had some cases similar to this one that I put before the court. So this makes this a very interesting episode.
I have to agree with you. Now, the investigation into Jarvis Young started on August 28th, 2023, after the 16-year-old student at Lakeland High School told the school resource deputy about the alleged sexual contact initiated by the track coach. Now, this track coach touched the offender, touched the student, and he was told him he would give him a massage. So while they were at the school, he removed the victim's shorts and touched his privates while attempting to perform an oral sex act. The victim told investigators he jumped up and stopped Young and told him to take him home. The incident happened 2 days prior to the interview when the two were in a school building. Now, Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd announced the arrest of Young, who had been arrested previously for inappropriate sexual behavior with minors, but never convicted. Now, Officer Francisco, retired Officer Francisco, what do you think about this?
Well, Dr. Matthews, once again, it's another unfortunate situation. And I like to refer to the victims as survivors because they have literally survived an ordeal that's a life-altering ordeal. But once again, this is a person in the position of trust who has violated that and has taken full advantage of this situation using a kid. You know, I've seen a couple of cases like this in the past where there have been school teachers and that have been track coaches as well. And they are taking advantage of the athletes. You know, it's a very unfortunate circumstance. And what aggravates it even more is the fact that he's HIV positive. And, you know, that could have been terrible. It could have, you know, traumatized this. He's already done damage, but it could have been damage that who knows how it would affect this child.
And this is admittedly so. So this is not speculation that he's HIV positive. He admitted this. So it's not rumors. This is something that is definitely bona fide. So that's huge.
Very, very much so. And according to Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, you know, he said that this was something that was self-admitted by this person, so they're going to take him on this, on his word. But the major thing with this is that they had an opportunity to interview him about the allegations. Once he was interviewed, he fled. You know, and just to hear that there's been a history with this particular instructor where he has been accused of this before back in 2011.
Right.
You know, so and during that time frame, he had taken two juveniles into a hotel.
Right.
I believe they tried to interview him and basically prosecute him about that regarding that situation, but They said the statute of limitations had expired. But I find that just, you don't go through all of those measures and not knowing before you jump off the cliff that you got a parachute or not. I just feel like there must have been some uncooperative witnesses or parents involved in that matter, which would have prevented the prosecution from taking its course.
Now, you bring up an interesting situation. He had this in his background in 2011. Here we are in 2023. It begs the question, how was he employed at this high school at this day and age? What kind of background check was done on him in 2023? Well, I should say 2020, because that's when he was hired at this high school. So what kind of background check was done on him that he was able to be employed at this high school in 2020?
Well, that shows you that there was not a background check done. This incident in 2011 actually went to the courts, which means that he was arrested. He was fingerprinted, which you wouldn't be able to find that out if you just a background check and fingerprint him. You would have saw that he had a sexual battery case and some more other charges that were included with that back in 2011. But this goes to show you that a lot of these institutions are pretty much just hiring people. And I don't know if it's a situation of like nepotism or something like that, but he certainly went under the radar without being detected. This man, what's his name is Jarvis Young, is a classic case of a predator. This is a predator, and predators can be highly calculated. I mean, in every sense of the word, you know what I mean? So
Correct.
It's the way that he approached his prey, that this is why we call them survivors, because he is approaching this matter like they're prey. And that means his approach, he's very charismatic about it. And these things, I'm just really shocked. But I tell you what, there's probably some litigation, some civil litigation that the family of this 16-year-old survivor would have over a situation like this, where the school employed a person, and they said that he just pretty much hung out around the sports programs. So he had a reputation of being a person that's around but not hired. Now that is a red flag. He's around, not doing no work. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're just watching the kids. That just tells you how loose it is at that school. And it's unfortunate because these kids had a thing when they started doing the investigation. They figured out that there was a saying, it's like, hey, Mr. Young, he's known for buying stuff, but don't let him touch you. So that doesn't make you like that screams out that there have been many students who've had experiences with this man, and he has tried to touch many of them. I guarantee you, as I say, this is going to be a Me Too move. There's going to be a lot of people to come and say, hey, you know what? He touched me when I was, 15. He touched me when I went to tryouts. He did this, he did that. This is going to happen. I believe that we're going to see almost like a Bill Cosby effect with this particular instructor. Watch and see.
Now, we know that he was not a teacher at the school. He was strictly the track coach. And you are correct in saying that he was, quote unquote, a predator. We know that he had some grooming tendencies because this 16-year-old involved in this particular situation said that he took him out for lunch. He did things. He bought him things to, and before he actually touched him. So in that is a classic case of grooming. So I'm sure that the hopes for Mr. Young was that he wouldn't say anything. But thank goodness that this survivor did say something. And like you're saying, the rumor was that he let him buy you things, but don't let him touch you. So all of that is classic grooming behavior of a predator. So for him to go under the radar for at least 3 years since he was hired in 2020, that says a lot, because yes, he has a lot of victims, but you can't tell me that no adults knew about this either, because kids talk and they talk to their friends, they talk to teachers. So somebody knew something. You can't tell me that nobody knew anything.
The most surprising thing about this to me was the reaction of the survivor's parents. They told him it was so the outcry in this situation was the child's parents.
Right.
Once the child's parents learned about it, they told their child, the 16-year-old, hey, you're gonna have to report it to the school tomorrow. I just think that's kind of like, I don't know, but I hear something about that. I think I'm just like, we're going to school tomorrow. I'll be there with you. Because kids have a problem with getting grown-ups to believe them. You
Absolutely.
have to go with your child and be supportive in this type of thing. And, I hope that it got a lot better, but I hear the school administration the superintendent, he was pretty upset about it. And he had 13,000 employees. He really wanted to know how this person, you know, go under the radar and not be detected. What happened to the background check? So I believe there's going to be some heads to roll on this as well.
But
But the parents need to be very supportive in this matter.
yeah, but like you're saying, if the survivor is outcrying to their parents, me as a parent, we're not going to the school. We're going to the police. If somebody has touched you inappropriately, I'm going to the police first, and then the police can tell the school.
Absolutely. Dr. Matthews, how something like this would go on if this occurred in Illinois? This would be a situation where, let's say, the parent is told about the abuse. In a normal situation, to me, I don't know what happened in this situation, but in a normal situation, the parent is usually the one that calls the police. And they say, hey, this happened yesterday, so on and so on. What happens next is that case, the initial preliminary officer takes the report. The report is then forwarded to a detective immediately. A detective has a certain amount of time to respond to that and start setting up what's called a victim sensitive interview with a child advocate. This interview is a recorded interview with a child advocate that basically they're very sensitive to the child's age. It's a soft environment. It makes them feel more comfortable and it's supposed to make them feel comfortable to open up and talk about something that's so embarrassing and so forth. And once that recording and interview is done by the child advocate, it's used as evidence. The moment that interview is done, the state's attorney office is notified. The state's attorney office reviews the video and they give an approval right then and there. And next thing you know, he's in jail the next day. On the same day that you would have been waiting to go to the school to talk to the school about what happened. You know what I mean? That's not happening.
Exactly. Because they let
So
an
there's a delay there.
entire weekend go by, from my understanding. And they're like, oh, go talk to the resource officer. Thank goodness the resource officer was a deputy. Because a lot of schools, and I know, for instance, in Chicago, the resource officer could be a security guard, the resource officer could be a police officer. You just never know who technically that resource officer could be. So the parents kind of sent them off on a blank mission, in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of times too, they don't really know what steps to take. I believe in those situations, whenever the parent sends the child back to school to talk about, hey, bring it up, make an official complaint, I think is one of those situations. They have some doubts too, so we got to do better as parents, when we hear our child that's saying, hey, this is already, this happened to me. And this kid was pretty direct with their parent,
Yeah.
According to the sheriff,
Right.
the predator took this child, had a conversation with this child about trying to improve his skills. The child was like, hey, how do I better? How do I do? What can I do to get better at this and get
Sport.
stronger?
Right.
And
Track.
basically, he took clear advantage of that
Yeah.
and began grooming this child, taking
Immediately.
this child out to eat at a Mexican restaurant. Things like that to me
He
are
gave
red
them workout equipment.
Yeah, gave him workout equipment. Those are red flags to a parent. A parent should have been asking questions, in
Correct.
my opinion.
Correct.
You know, because this is how these things go under the radar so long. A parent should have been saying, "Hey, where did you guys go out to eat? Was it just you two guys? What you eat? What you eat? What happened after that? There's questions you have to ask your kid, so your kid knows that you're interested in knowing about their day, about what they're experiencing, and luckily for this survivor, they put their foot in the door right immediately and said, "Hey, stop, take me home."
Not
So
only
it'd be interesting.
that, not only that, that track coach should have asked the parents, was it okay to take that child out to eat? You can't have my kid in your car without asking me first. You
Absolutely.
you
That's one of
can't
the things that predators do. They isolate children away from, and that's a lot of predators. That's one of their methods of operation is to
exactly.
isolate you away from the people that would basically, it would snap in their head, hey, you know what? That sounds kind of weird. They'll isolate you from those people. And the same thing in domestic violence situations and
Right.
relationships. It's usually they isolate you away from people who care or would notice. Their antennas are way up, and it's like, hey, no, it's just innocent. We just went out to eat. Those kind of things. I've heard a lot of crazy excuses uh, from these offenders who believe that it's okay to ask an underage child out on a date. You know, this world is full of surprises.
That's horrible. Now, a quote from Sheriff Grady Judd about Jarvis is Jarvis Young is a predator. He likes children in a way that no adult should, and he used his position of authority to take advantage of a child for his own illicit sexual gratification. He needs to be locked up and never be allowed unsupervised near children again. I have to agree with him.
I agree wholeheartedly. I have a special place in my heart for survivors, children survivors, because I've prosecuted. Uh, I would say I arrested and pretty much built the case for prosecution for predators like this, and just to hear some of the sick stories, it's like one of those things. Is like I really hope that the system does a good job in prosecuting this man and convicting him, because I believe there's going to be other victims that come out, and hopefully this man never ever gets out of jail. Usually, in a conviction with a child of this age, and so forth, if he's convicted, he may have to register as a sex offender for a period of 10 years or maybe even a lifetime, depending on what the judge believes. Usually, if it's a young child, and it's like you have to register every year for life
Right.
or every 6 months, you know. But hopefully, they go real hard on this guy, because this is outrageous. It'd be very interesting to see what happens.
Right. Because with him doing it in 2011 and getting away with it, if he continues that type of behavior with getting away with it, he's going to escalate next time. So he only touched this particular child. We know this survivor, we know that he has HIV, and we know that he tried to commit an oral sex act on him. It's only going to escalate if he keeps getting away with these types of behaviors.
I agree. I hope that they do their job. Uh, he has definitely got away with this on several other occasions, and I think this is the time that's going to really sit him down. And they're really, really he chose the right place, because that sheriff, I really like that sheriff down there in Polk County. I'm just telling you, I like him because he's really brutally honest. He's
Definitely.
very brutally honest, and I mean he's telling the truth about everything as far as how the school should be embarrassed about allowing a person to work at the school this long. If you work
Definitely.
around children, I don't understand why there isn't a yearly background check. This would be something that pops up every year. I mean, they check every year at least, but not years go by. It sounds like this guy never had one. So there's some liability there.
Definitely. Now, I always like to give my listeners takeaways. What would be one of your takeaways for if someone or a parent or a child finds themselves in this same situation, being stalked or preyed on by a predator, or if a parent finds themselves faced with this by their child?
I think one of the most important takeaways from this is that you have to remember that children are sensitive, and you have to make it where they feel comfortable to talk about a very uncomfortable situation. And also, they have to be aware that they have someone to go to. If anytime something odd happens, and you have to understand, I don't care how silly it sounds, how weird it sounds, I'm not going to talk about you. I'm not going to pick on you. I just want to know what happened, and we'll both deal with it together. I think that's one of the takeaways from this, because if you really think about it, there are some more victims out here that have not had that conversation with their parents from this same guy. And I truly believe that without that, it has a tremendous amount of trauma and damage to a child and to a young boy or girl. And I mean, their lives are affected forever. So it's very important, a very, very important conversation to have as a parent. And don't feel bad about asking again. Again, if your child is in contact sport, or spend time with a coach or teacher, go out of town with a teacher or class, hey, ask the questions. Don't think you're bugging them. You're the only one that's going to be in their corner when it all goes bad. So you might as well get a head start on it and let them know they have that kind of support.
Now, one of my takeaways would be to believe your child. Now, I know that could be hard, and I can honestly say I have experience in that, in believing your child. I know kids like to prank parents, I know they like to lie, but I want to say give your child the benefit of the doubt. Even if it turns out to not be true, it could definitely be a case of like the boy that cried wolf, the girl that cried wolf, but it could just be that one time that you don't believe them when it's something big. So I would say just believe your child, because you just never know. So that would be my biggest takeaway, because as parents, we get busy. We are on our, doing our own thing. We're working, we're trying to live our lives, but our kids are out here and we're not always with them. They're not always with us. So we don't always know what goes on. So if they come to us and they say something, we should just believe them and react accordingly and do what we know to do.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, that's a real good one too, because I gotta say I'm guilty of that. My kid has told me some things. I'm like, yeah, really? I've second guessed it, but I think when it comes to something this important and this serious, there's no hesitation. We will believe you. Period. You just tell us.
Exactly.
Stress it. I mean, stress it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could be a family member that's offending. These situations get way more complex.
They do.
Not just a school. It could be
Yeah.
a family member, someone in your house, living in your house. Oh man, it gets to be very, very challenging for a kid to feel like they're right in the middle of it.
Yeah, and they don't tell you because they just know you're not going to believe them, because you might have said like, I'm never going to believe you, or you're always telling me, the lie, or you just said something and they just like hang on to that and they're not going to tell you. So just believe them, even though
Very much true.
you might not want
Believe them. I hate to say it. Right, exactly. And you know what? And I found that a lot of these most common cases are the ones that involve a mother, mom's boyfriend,
Mhm.
and a daughter or son.
Yeah.
Those are the most common domestic related kind of sexual abuse situations. And you better believe it. There's a lot of mothers out here that don't believe their kid when they're telling them, hey, he came into my room last night, those kind of things. So,
Yeah. And
oh, you
it's
have
true,
to be
but the
children.
parent doesn't believe them, and you just should, because you just never know.
Heartbreaking. Well,
Yeah.
let's hope something happens here in this so we can kind of use it as an example of, hey, this is why you got to say something.
Exactly. If you see something, say something. If something happens to you, say something, because you just never know. Because there are predators out there. And we don't want people to have to be survivors. We just rather the predators be behind bars.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I would
I
love
agree.
to thank you for being my special guest today. And you're always welcome here at the Criminal Justice Corner.
Well, thank you. And I think I saw you on Chicago Media Takeout. I saw you. It was, so I'm feeling very, very honored to be in on your show. So thank you very much.
Definitely. I was definitely on Chicago Media Takeout on IG. So, yeah, that was me. My
Wow.
consulting firm, Dr. Jennifer Matthews Consulting. You can definitely find us on the web, drjennifermatthews.com. We're always open for business, for video enhancement and consulting services. Yeah.
Wow. Hey, that's awesome.
Yes.
But I'm glad you're getting that exposure because we really got to get that word out to people that, it helps.
Yeah.
I like that. I like what you're doing.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having
Yes, and you can find us on IG at Dr. Jennifer Matthews and Criminal Justice Corner. And please comment, like, subscribe, and share. Tell a friend to tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner podcast. And you can always catch us every Wednesday with new episodes. And thank you for listening.